Welcome to Financial Fitness, this week's episode, and special guest. Actually, it's a great day. Our first guest live in studio, Coach Gabriel Fertitta, head coach of Catholic High School. And those of you maybe wondering out there, why are we doing football on a financial and health radio show? But the bigger picture is Coach has created a culture of winning and repeat winning at Catholic High at the highest level. Multiple state championships in his first 5 years being there as offensive coordinator and head coach. And so we wanted to bring Coach in and really learn a little bit more about what he does at Catholic High and what's made him such a success. So thank you for being my very first guest on the show, by the way.
Yeah, man. Hey, that's a big honor, you know.
It is.
Appreciate you having me.
No one else can ever be the first guest.
That's right. That's right.
It's a big deal. Coach and I talked last year. I remember saying I was going to be starting a radio show, and I really wanted him to be a guest on my show because I'm really intrigued, and I follow sports a lot, and people who are successful in sports tend to do well in business and in their personal lives a lot of times too. So, Coach, I just want to present 3-time state champion, Coach Gabriel Fertitta. Round of applause.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. Believe it or not, I look forward to these kinds of talks more than I look forward to the football X's and O's stuff. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, I know. How many hours a week do you put in as a head coach at Catholic High?
There have been a few weeks where at the end of the week I said, you know what, I'm going to just go back for the heck of it and count it up. Mostly because I'm thinking about how much I was away from my girls and my wife at home. But, I mean, there's been some weeks with 80 plus hours because you've got freshman games that happen, you know, so you teach all day, then you got practice, then a freshman game that goes until 9:30 or whatever it is. Then you play a JV game during the week. That game might be at Santa Ma or at East Ascension. So all the way down there, all the way back, plus the varsity game, and then our Sunday stuff. So, I mean, some weeks it could be upwards of 80 hours or more, but I am really proud of in our staff and in the culture that we have of our program. When I tell other coaches elsewhere, whether in Texas or Alabama or wherever, how little we actually meet and, you know, grind through all this stuff, that some of them are really surprised at just how little some of the time that we have to put in. So I am proud of that. You know, I don't get too proud of wearing the badge of honor being away for as long, but it does. Some weeks it gets long.
It's a real sacrifice you guys make as coaches, especially head coaches. The hours. You know, I had friends at Ohio State that worked in that program, and the travel as well. You know, so it's a definite grind. You mentioned your wife and daughters. I got to make you laugh a little bit. Something off topic, but Landon, my son, the quarterback over there for your team, and a couple of his buddies were at the house, and a dinner conversation came up. I don't even know if you've heard, but
I have not.
The boys brought up that the coaches all have extremely hot wives. That seems to be a theme among the players on the team. So it's a compliment to all you coaches and everything.
Certainly. It's certainly a compliment to our wives, for sure.
Especially the wives, but they give up a lot for you guys. They sacrifice a lot, like you said, time away from the family and everything.
They do. People really don't. They know and kind of understand, man, coaches' wives, it's a tough road to hoe, but I don't know that they really fully understand the nitty-gritty of how tough it can be, and all of them, all of our wives, the coaches' wives, all are full-time. You know, they have full-time jobs, you know, so you know, it definitely is a balancing act, and it's a sacrifice that the wives and the kids of the coaches didn't opt into this. They were thrust into it and didn't have a choice. So big kudos to them. My wife Charity, who I'm sure is going to be listening, it's tough for them, but they do a magnificent job with it.
Right. Behind every great man's a great woman, and apparently behind all y'all's a great looking woman too. So kudos to all the wives there. And again, you guys wouldn't be able to achieve what you can achieve if they weren't handling things at the house while you guys are away for
No question.
80 hours a week. That's a grind. I want to learn a little bit about you and kind of start from the beginning. I mean, tell us, when you first started coaching in Alabama, take us from there and then to your tenure here at Catholic.
My first full-time job was as offensive coordinator at Locust Fork High School, which is, at the time, it was a 4A high school in Alabama. But even before that, I was a graduate assistant at my old school, Mississippi College.
Okay.
And, what's interesting about my time as a graduate assistant is that going all the way back to my last year of playing, I played for 4 years and I was done. I was not a standout player. I could return punts. I was the only crazy one back there who would just catch the thing.
You would think at our height we'd be highly
no
recruited.
kidding, right? You would think. But I was done playing. I got my degree, and I talked to the head coach and said, I want to coach. I want to be a grad assistant. There was a grad assistant position open.
Okay.
And he really talked me into coming back and playing my last year and said, look, I promise you'll have a GA spot when you finish next year. Well, I played, and then the coach got fired. And in the interim, there was just a void of information. Everybody went home for Christmas break. I didn't know if I was going to get to be a grad assistant or not. I went ahead and registered for classes. One of the other coaches on the staff, who's a really good friend of mine, who comes up later in my coaching journey, he really kept me informed on what was going on, but nobody knew who the new head coach was going to be. In the interim of all that, Mississippi College hired a guy named Norman Joseph as the head football coach, who incidentally was our offense coordinator this year for Catholic. And our quarterback at the time intercepted the hire and got with Coach Joseph and got the GA position. So I come back from Christmas break. I'm all registered for school, thinking my grad school is going to be paid for because I'm going to be a grad assistant. I walk in the football building, and sitting at the GA table is the quarterback. and I had no idea. I was just blowing in the wind at that point. Coach Joseph and Coach John Williams, who's my kind of like my mentor in this business. Long story short, they finagled a way for me to be a graduate assistant.
Okay.
And just kind of came up with thinking outside of the box and all of that. So I was super excited once that happened, but it was a big adversity for me at that point. And I walked in first day to be a GA, and I went to the receiver room, and my buddy John Williams, who finagled it for me to be a GA, said, no. You're in here with me. You're going to be the O-line GA. And I'm sitting here thinking, I know zero about offensive line play. I played receiver my entire life.
You don't look like an offensive lineman.
Exactly. And that decision on his part and guidance from him shaped my entire coaching career. I mean, that one piece of advice, which it wasn't really advice, it was like, this is what you're going to do. That shaped my entire career. So that's when I went to Alabama.
Okay.
I was his offense coordinator. He was the head coach where we were. And then ended up at Catholic. The president, Mr. Toulier, is a longtime family friend of ours. They needed an English teacher and a football coach. So I came over here and did that for 3 years. And then my buddy John became the head football coach at Itawamba Community College in Mississippi, which, if you know anything about Mississippi junior college football, it's a big deal. Yeah. It's the SEC of junior college football. So he became the head coach. He hired me as the offensive coordinator. I did that for a year, and then I just missed the interaction with the high school players and the Brothers of the Sacred Heart, all of that. St. Stanislaus had a head coach opening come up, and it's all about relationships. Like when you follow somebody's coaching career, it's really not about the job. I've not interviewed for a job ever in my entire life as a football coach. It's all about the relationship. So the principal at Catholic was one of the brothers, Brother Barry Landry. he became the principal at Stanislaus when the head coaching job opened up, and then I went to Stanislaus as the head coach. And then from there, Coach Weiner called me after 3 years of being the head coach and said, look, I'm ready to give up the OC job. He had been the offensive coordinator at Catholic for 30 years as the head coach. And I jumped at the chance to do it.
Awesome.
And then when he retired, I came into the job as the head coach.
That was, and I remember that time vividly because my youngest brother-in-law, Ian Bryan, was your starting quarterback. You guys had, until that point, Catholic High over 100 years, never won a state title. 2015, you come in as the offensive coordinator, and you guys make a run and win the state championship in dramatic fashion. It was some really, I remember some playoff games where we're literally in the hospital. My father-in-law had open heart surgery, and we're yelling at the TV in the playoffs. And then, a couple weeks after open heart surgery, we're in the Superdome watching Ian and you guys win your first state title in 2015.
Yeah, that was awesome.
We had the photo up there.
That was Ian and Landon.
2015 and Landon this year. So, you've had a tradition of winning since you got there. And you touched on a couple things, and where I really want to tie it into, the message and some of the things that I even want to learn from you is the culture.
Right. Yeah.
My son is never late for practice. You have a 7 a.m. practice. You're supposed to start at 6:59. Your principles and the leadership, like you said, mentoring and getting these kids at a young age. I can't get adult grown employees who make six figures to operate as disciplined and as well as your football program. How do you do it? How do you do that?
That's a tough question. Culture right now, particularly in the football world, is it's really overused at this point, but it's a giant buzzword. Is what is the culture? How do you build culture? And culture is one of those things that, you can't really put your finger on it, but when you see it, you know it. You can recognize it when you see it. And I think there's a lot of what formulates our culture at Catholic all goes back to Bob Cade. Bob Cade was the Cur Dog. He would give, people probably see those Cur Dog bumper stickers all around, and everybody, what's that mean? Mm-hmm. It was a gentleman by the name of Bob Cade who would speak to our team every year since 1988, I think was the first year under Coach Weiner, when he spoke to the team before the start of the season, and he did that for about 30 straight years. And almost everything so for us, that's our true north. I think as a program or as a business or whatever you're doing, something has to always be that true north that you can point to. Why am I doing this? Whatever it is that I'm doing, does it point to
like a common goal or
true north, right? And for us, a lot of it goes back to the things that he said, quotes that he would have. We have a couple of recordings of some of his talks. And there's so much in that to unpack. But I think one of the key components of that culture is, and again, this is way overused and it's cliche at this point, but is a focus on process over results. Mm-hmm. And everybody says that, focus on the process. But
I remember that in the first year, Landon coming to school there.
Right. Yeah, and I think people sometimes believe that they're doing that, but don't actually necessarily know how to every single day. Culture is in the little things. It's not in the big things. It's not in the things you post on the wall or the pictures that are around. It's in the everyday application of, are you moving towards that true north? And one of those things for us is a focus on process over results, a focus on how you're doing what you're doing rather than the result of it. Because as a business, you may have the perfect process and work really hard and do well, and somebody's business just maybe their product's just a little bit better, and you don't really have control over that.
Yeah.
Right. What you have control over is the process of that.
Exactly.
And that's been a big key for us, and going through that and talking through that goes back to all of our state championship runs and learning from failure, which is another really, really important aspect of our culture, which goes into grit, and there's a lot of things there. But, we have not won a state championship when we had an undefeated season. And all through that, in 15 we lost 3 games. We started 0-2.
I do remember.
Yeah, and the wheels looked like they were going to fall off.
Yeah.
And we made this long run, and we lost the last regular season game of the year that year, got our butts kicked by Dutchtown, and then rattled off the playoff run. And then in 16, undefeated regular season, 10-0, lost the first playoff game.
Yeah.
17, we lost 3 games, won a state championship. This year, we lost, 2 games?
2 games early on.
Lost 2 games early on, made the run to the state championship. 2019, undefeated, 12-0 in the state championship game. We lose the state championship game. Now, I'm not advising that you intentionally lose games, but I think you learn from failure.
Absolutely, that's big in business. We talk about that. I interview people and I ask them about the biggest adversity they faced in their life, and their answer on that tells me a lot about that. So I think, like you said, the adversities they do sharpen you, they toughen you up sometimes. You guys had some adversity this season. Like you said, you had the 2 early and close. 1 or 2 point shootouts, 40-something points in each game. Just absolute shootouts against top-notch competition with St. Thomas More and Edna Carr, who went on. I think both of them went on to win state titles in their division or played for the state title. One might have lost.
STM won it. Carr lost
by
the championship.
Yep. Surprising. And then you had a couple of games canceled. And speaking of adversity and everything, you had a couple games canceled, and you guys scheduled top caliber competition to replace some of the weaker competition that canceled for COVID. What was your thoughts? Why did you pick the number? You guys went in to play the number 1 team in the state, 2 years undefeated, Acadiana, and then up to Ruston. So why did you pick those really elite programs to go on short notice to go play those guys?
Yeah, one of the things I really believe in is that these kids work so hard, and they deserve to be tested. They deserve to know where they stand. If you don't ever really schedule difficult competition, then you really don't know
how good you are.
You don't know how good you are. And to me, as a kid who puts in all the hours and all that, I don't know how good am I?
Right.
How good were we able to be? And so that's one of the things. One of them is through necessity a little bit. Not everybody's just lining up to come play us. But those things ended up serving us really well. Strictly from a football standpoint, you look at the 2 schools that we played. Both of them heavy run teams, option teams,
right? And
then we turn around in the state championship game and we play a team that runs the option.
I think that was huge.
In a way, in the back of my mind, when we scheduled Acadiana, which is very similar to John Curtis, I thought that at some point through the playoff run we would see them.
Yep.
We didn't, but lo and behold, we ended up playing Bird in the title game. So that worked out really well, and I challenged the guys. We had a really young team, I felt like.
Yeah, you guys are going to be strong going forward.
And it took some growth. It without those early losses, and the growth that happened because of those, and then those late tests, the Ruston game, they were number 3 in 5A when we played them, and then Acadiana, who was number 1 in the state when we played them. We wouldn't have been able to see how far have we grown since these 2 games.
Yeah,
we've been rattling off all these wins. Now let's go see.
Right.
And it was before the playoffs. It was before it was for all the marbles, So it ended up really working out for us.
So tell me, you're going into the playoffs. You guys had, like we talked about adversity. You're playing Acadiana. You're dominating them. They haven't lost in a couple of years. You're dominating those guys, and I'm literally get the call from my wife in tears. I'm watching it. Landon, your starting quarterback, goes down with high ankle sprain, and you guys hang on to win that game. And then going into the playoffs, how did you change your entire strategy and preparation for those games and keep from just continue and keep the morale? That's how did you keep the morale up? Because we also lost a lot of guys before the state title game too, star running backs and other players. We'd see these guys falling, and Landon's just making a comeback, limping in for the state championship and everything. So how did you keep the morale up, and how did you strategize with all of that?
Yeah, I think that goes back to trying to make the entire organization feel like they have a significant say in how successful you can be, and at the same time developing all the people that are in your care, not just focus on, Landon's the starting quarterback, so he gets all of the development, and the guys who are underneath him don't necessarily get that same development. And I think that's really critical, and it's a delicate balance too, because in one sense you want to develop your top salesperson so that when the big sales pitch comes, they nail it, right? I mean, you want to put your best guy out there for that. But at the same time, what happens when that guy gets a job somewhere else or starts his own business? What have you done to develop
the rest of
these guys?
True.
And I think football coaches tend to make the mistake of only focusing on
the stars,
developing the starters, developing those guys.
True.
And so I think that's another thing that points to the culture. If you come watch one of our practices, there's one quarterback who's doing that particular play or repetition, and all the other guys are behind him going through all of those motions on air. They're doing the handoff, doing the footwork. Their eyes are going through the read progression, and so there's a focus there on those mental repetitions. Right. And we'll, even as we're going through practice film, if I see one of those guys in the back and his stripe of his helmet was over here and all the 5 other guys' stripe was over there to begin the read progression, and I know he's wrong, instead of coaching Landon, the guy who's in throwing the ball, I might say, hey, Johnny, you're the only one with your eyes over here, but he's in the back. He's not taking the rep. Explain to me what you were seeing, and then they come to realize, like, man, he's really watching.
Paying attention.
He's paying attention to what I'm doing, not just what the starter's doing.
When you said the process over the results, because you could have some stellar talent and get a sale closed, get the deal done. Same thing in my business. They get the deal done, but they did it wrong. You still got a first down or you got a touchdown, but it was a completely busted play, and you turned it out. So I think that's key, like you said, knowing the process and not just focusing on the results. And that's a big thing.
That happens a lot, you play a team and you win, but man, you played sloppy. I mean, there has to be a culture that allows for you to say, hey, nice job, you won. We're never going to trivialize a win because they're hard to come by. But at the same time, a culture where you can go in and even after a win, you can tear some butts because the stuff wasn't done right. And that comes individually too. A receiver catches a touchdown, but he didn't run the route the right way. And some guys take that constructive criticism better than others. Some say, I scored a touchdown. What else you want me to do, right? And others are more open and accepting of that criticism. The people that are open and accepting to that criticism, even when the result seems like they did a great job, those are the people that end up being really successful.
Good coaches aren't always going to tell you what you want to hear.
That's right.
I had some of my employees, why are you so hard on me? But then they come to appreciate it. So, as a coach there, I mean, what would you like to convey as a message to future players considering coming to Catholic High?
It's not a place for everybody, I would say. It's a difficult place if you're not prepared to come challenge yourself in all areas, not just in football. I think the general public from outside sees Catholic, and the most visible part of the school tends to be the football program. So it appears as though that's what drives the culture of the school, when in fact Catholic is about so much more than that. And football is just the one piece of that. And the people that come to Catholic who tend to have the best experience are those who come for the whole thing, not just to be a football player. They come because they want the academics, they want the social, they want the spiritual development that they get, along with what I would put up against the athletic development of any high school athletic program in the country. But I would put the classroom up against any classroom in the country. I would put the spiritual side of that. So it's a great place. It's demanding, but it's a place you come to for the whole picture, not just for one thing.
I'd agree. I've seen where I grew up and the schools I went to versus what they get there at Catholic High, and it's just incredible. The same thing with the football program. I mean, I see when I played my freshman, sophomore year versus what you guys do, and the structure and everything that it encompasses. And I mean, it's a testament to you. One thing with corporations and businesses, the company where they bring in a new CEO to take over. We had a coaching one time with a gentleman, and they talked about how they bring in a CEO to take over, but he said the first thing he always does is fire the guy at the top, because it's always a reflection of the man at the top, and that's you. So, Coach, I think it's definitely a reflection of you and the incredible things you've done at Catholic High, and why you guys continue to keep winning. So,
yeah, I appreciate that.
We're out of time. They're signaling us we're out of time. I wish we had an hour-long segment, because there's a lot more I'd love to pick your brain about today. So
maybe after you get all your guys through, I'll come back through for a different talk.
Hopefully we're doing another one after your next title.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And
absolutely.
Again, like I said, I think there's many more titles, and then there's still one more kid in the lineage here. We got my little boy Asher. So there might be one more coming through to play for you.
I think I saw a video of him running around out there dodging people and all of that. He looked like Baby Ib or Baby Landon out there.
I'll tell you a funny story. I know we're over the time. Funny story. Landon came and watched Asher in his first jiu-jitsu tournament, big brother, and he said, "Man, I'm tensed up." Landon was so tense, and Asher dominated the entire tournament. And Landon was so proud. He goes, "I'm so," like, he didn't ever feel that excitement. I said, imagine how it feels being a parent.
He got to see the other side,
and he got to see his little brother. That's
awesome.
So it was a cool thing. And so he's such a good big brother, and those kids are special kids.
Yeah, he's a great kid.
You've done a job making them even better. So I appreciate you for everything.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate y'all for having us today. Tune in, Talk 107.3, the new flavor of radio. Thank you guys again for tuning in to Financial Fitness.